So, are the dead able to come back and bring comfort to another patient? Let's find out. Hello, my spooky friends. It is time for some more nursing ghost stories. You know they're the best because they're true. All right, we're going to start today with an incredible story. I have a heartwarming ghost story. This story came from my nursing educator at the time, back when I used to work oncology. She said she was still a young nurse. There was a young oncology patient. He was a young man who had had a difficult life and was estranged from his family. So the nurses and staff in the oncology unit became something of a substitute family for him. He was normally placed in one hallway where we put our chemo patients. Eventually, though, he developed DIC and died. After his death, she said any patient in that same hallway who was alone and maybe a little confused would talk about the young bald man with pale skin who came to visit them. He would sit beside them and just talk with and comfort them. My nurse educator guessed that he wanted to bring comfort to the lonely people in that hall because he was a lonely patient himself. That is amazing. Maybe he did. Maybe that's how he got to fulfill some of, what he didn't get to experience in life, or maybe what he wanted to. So, I don't know. Is he still hanging around? Now, this is a little bit of a longer one, but boy, is it good. I work in a busy perioperative department. There is a charge nurse that I work with who has been a nurse for over 50 years. We will call her Gail. Gail is incredible, the mama of the unit. Everyone at this hospital knows her and loves her. She doesn't take stuff from anyone, but also has this kind and approachable demeanor. She is an amazing resource if you want to know anything about anything. Anyway, I respected her immensely. Gail always opens the unit early in the morning. She has a very set routine and arrives about 30 minutes before the shift even starts so that she can take her time writing out the schedule and tidying up the unit. So Gail arrived at the hospital early one morning a few years ago and parked in the large parking garage across the street. Gail is making her way down the long hallway, and it's pretty quiet, especially at 5:30 a.m., but on this morning she sees a doctor that she has known for years, a well-respected cardiologist, Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith had been diagnosed with cancer a few years prior and had been in and out of the hospital for treatment and admissions during times of illness. Gail was so happy to see him because it had been a few months, and he looked incredible. His treatments must have been working. As they passed each other, she said, "Dr. Smith, it's so good to see you. You look fantastic." Dr. Smith gave Gail a huge smile and said, "Gail, I feel better than I have in years. It's so nice to see you." Gail continued down the hall, up the stairs to the unit. She started preparing the schedule for the day, and surgeons started trickling in to input orders and review patient charts. Gail noticed another cardiologist who had also worked there for a long time. She exclaimed, "Dr. Allen, I just saw Dr. Smith as I came in this morning. He looks amazing. I'm so glad that he's responding to treatment." Dr. Allen was silent and had a strange look on his face. He walked over to Gail and put his hand on her shoulder. He said, "Gail, Dr. Smith passed away last night on 6 South, the cancer unit." Gail thought he was kidding. She insisted that she had just seen him, but Dr. Allen assured her that Dr. Smith had passed away and was currently down in the morgue, in the basement. The entrance to the morgue is the only door in the middle of that long hallway that leads to the stairs. Gail fell silent as she realized she had seen him walking past her as she approached the morgue entrance. He was headed toward the exit. She told Dr. Allen that she must have been mistaken as not to appear crazy. But she knew what she saw. She was pretty shaken up when we arrived for our shifts, and after a few hours, she quietly told some of us what had happened. She stopped walking that direction and took the long route away from the morgue from then on. Well, Gail, I don't blame you. I am pretty sure I would do the same thing. Yeah, it's kind of interesting though, but that was great way to say goodbye to Dr. Smith. So, what do you all think? What would you do if that happened? I'm just curious. I used to work at an old psych hospital. Halfway through the night shift, I got floated up to another unit. They had a whole bunch of discharges that evening, and most of the empty rooms hadn't been cleared. I did one of the Q15 safety checks. I didn't know offhand which rooms had been emptied, so I just walked by all of them and matched up a face with a name. One of the rooms had the bedroom lights off and an unmade bed, but the bathroom light was on and the bathroom door was open. I grabbed the handle and started to open the bathroom door all the way. The handle wrenched out of my hand and the door slammed shut out of nowhere before I could open it all the way. Then I heard a violent banging on the walls from inside the bathroom, and I looked on the clipboard and saw that no patient was assigned to that room. I opened the door, and sure enough, the bathroom was empty. Later that night, the blood pressure cuff on the machine next to my med cart went off on its own 3 times. The house supervisor, a woman in her 60s, had worked at the facility for almost 30 years. I told her about the creepy event that had transpired. She turned white as a sheet. She told me that 15 years before, a patient, a young woman in her 20s, had smuggled a knife onto the unit. Her wrists in the shower of that bathroom and passed away. The house supervisor told me she could smell that iron-laden blood scent even before she walked in that room. I am not at all superstitious or a believer in ghosts, but that night was creepy enough to make me wonder. Girl, it would me too. Especially, I've had that happen, not at the hospital, but when the door, nobody's in there and the door jerks back. It is a little unnerving to say the least. I worked in a really, really old hospital, and I went out during night shift to move my car closer, and when I was riding the elevator back up, the lights began to flicker, and the elevator suddenly got freezing cold. I had goosebumps all over. Someone got on with me, and they couldn't believe how cold it was. When the doors opened, it was like a wave of hot air. Then I was setting up one of our operating rooms, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. A roll of IV tape hit the floor in the middle of the room like someone had tossed it. There was no one around. The arc of it wasn't from anywhere where it could have fallen. It just fell out of nowhere. My hospital is old as crap. We label rooms as crazy rooms because we think they're haunted and make every patient that stay in them crazy. Oh, yeah. The other night working C19 floor, I was standing outside of one of these crazy rooms. A person inside had pulled their BiPAP off. As I was gowning up and just got done putting on my gloves, I reached for the door handle. Suddenly, the door very forcefully pulls from the inside. I honestly had thought someone went in there before me and just forgot to turn the alarm off on their way out. I let the door open until it hit the wall behind it. No one was inside except the patient, who is bedbound and can't move hardly. Fixed his stuff and ran. Also, the whole thing about lights going off in rooms that are unoccupied is true. Sometimes if you go in the room, you can hear things come from the receiver on the remote. Yeah, what is it with these doors? Do they just pull it? I don't know. I think I'm kind of out on that one. I would either be out or it would make me really angry. Stop it! I don't know. All right. Early in my career, I worked in the ICU. I had two patients. One was an elderly woman who had broken her hip, a mild cardiac history, and was just in for observation. A rare, easy patient. Boy, is that rare. Unheard of in my ICU. It was time for my lunch break, so I went in the room to check on her and see if she needed anything before I left for lunch. She said no, I'm okay. But do you hear that beautiful music? I listened, and I heard nothing. No TVs, no radio, just the sound of vents and monitors beeping. I said, no, I don't hear it. She said, listen closely. It's like angels singing. Beautiful. I started to think she may be getting something called ICU psychosis, but she hadn't been with us that long. I went to get lunch at the cafe and came back to eat in the unit break room. 10 minutes into my lunch, I heard the code blue alarm go off. Then the overhead announcement stating the bed number. I paused and it hit me. That was my patient's room. I was confused at first because she was so stable. And suddenly that comment about the angel singing popped into my head. I quit my lunch break and went into the room to help with the code. Everyone was confused about why she was coding because she was fine. Anyway, she passed away, never came close to saving her. It was her time. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful story when you hear, if you hear the angels singing or this beautiful music. I mean, we've talked about some people passing away in really bad ways. So I think that is a beautiful story. Okay, I think we have time for one more. So I just started at a small rural hospital in Soda Springs, Idaho. There used to be a SNF/LTC that was in use for a lot of years. I was shown around the hospital and taken to this little used area, and I felt them. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck. They stood up, goosebumps on my arms, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched by multiple entities. I was a little unnerved and mentioned this to my coworker, Annie. She just laughed and said they were just sweet old ghosts. I have to go to that area every shift to get my uniform for the day, and I have caught sight of a few sweet old people. Lights go off randomly, and I hear noises constantly when there. I hustle through and pretend it's not happening. So what would you do if you had to go into a room and you could see and hear things in there? I don't know if there's any alternative. Why do you have to go in that room? I don't know. Would you go? Would you change jobs? It's just like, how many clothes do I have to take off? Because I don't want to get naked in front of ghosts. I mean, that's private. Anyway, tell me what you think. Please submit your stories. I have gotten one or two of them, and I will share them. I'm trying to compile enough for a whole video. But anyway, in the meantime, I hope you enjoy these spooky stories, and I will see you next time. And remember to stay spooky.